Hello, everyone. We are going to wait. There's still people joining the meeting, so I'm going to give it another minute or two, and we will start soon. Bernadette, have things slowed down?
Yeah, I think we can probably get started.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to our first meeting for 2023. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ginger Velasquez and I'm the Executive Director for Business and Finance in the Office of Business Services. Before we get started on our agenda, just a few housekeeping items. You've all been placed on mute, so please type any questions you might have into the chat box, and keep in mind those chat questions go to everyone. We have a team that is reviewing those questions as they come in, and we will try to get to all of them. But if time constrains us, we will be sure to review any of the unanswered questions after the meeting, and we'll follow up on those as well. Also, we have already started the recording, so we will again be recording our meeting and emailing each of you a link to the recording. So if you have additional questions that come up after this meeting and you need to review a segment, or if you need presenter contact information, you will have all of that as well. And finally, always feel free to reach out to me and my staff whenever you have questions, comments, or ideas. Bernadette Rossmore and Stacy Balmas are here to serve you and assist in resolving your issues. And you will find our contact information on the last slide of the presentation, so you can reference it at any time. So we have a packed agenda today, but first we do have one important announcement regarding a FabWeb update from Jason Bain. So Jason.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this quick opportunity. Last October, and I'll throw that link in the chat box, we announced we had the new FabWeb unit rep certification course, and that was something that was going to be required for all existing unit reps to take and pass the certification, complete that final assessment by February 1st. As you can see here, our current statistics on that for each of our universities there, UIC and UIS. So we have approximately, let's go with like 13 days before that deadline. So what does that mean, right? We're going to send out another communication yet this week. We are hoping to dwindle those numbers down before we start reaching out individually, before we start asking Ginger and her staff to begin to make phone calls and reach out to these individuals who, again, have not completed that process. If they don't, right, here's the biggest fear, right? If the current unit reps do not complete this certification by the time we, reach that February 1st, one, we're not going to shut everything down, but, right, if that lapses, they have to take the certification all over again, right? Anyway, you have to work with the USC to get access, right? And you may run into incompatible roles because maybe you've got an exemption and that's already been built into the process, right? So I'm going to drop a file into the chat box as long, again, with that hyperlink. That Excel file will also be sent out with everybody's presentations today. I'm asking you as business managers to review that list, right? Motivate those people, identify, maybe they got started and didn't realize they didn't complete the process, right? Have them review, take a look at it, make sure you get that completed so that we, again, if we have to make phone calls, if we have to start working on a one-on-one basis with individuals, we can do that with a small amount of numbers. Otherwise, we may have to, again, remove their access. If you know that are individuals that are going to, we don't want them to have access, please let us know. Right, that's what you're doing. You're just going to let that lapse. Let us know, communicate, so we're not, again, actively working to try to get that person to complete the process. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep.
So without further ado, our first presentation today will be updates from the Office of Procurement Services from Aaron Carter, our Assistant Vice President for Procurement Services. So Aaron.
Thanks, Ginger. Not a lengthy presentation, just happy to check in with the group. I think it's important to stay engaged as things change. I think there's several members of the procurement services team that are giving pretty specific presentations today. So I'll keep it brief. Unless I continue here, otherwise, I think we're navigating into a pretty good place with our Amazon rollout. At least finding a normal, let me put it that way. And I think kind of the next steps is we look to, grow the offerings within that platform, including some of the initiatives we're undertaking to add diversity to our Amazon for Business platform. So I think, I always enjoy kind of hearing the challenges, and I will admit maybe it was the holidays, but they're lessening as of late. So I think that we're at least settling in. I think yesterday I received a request that maybe we find a way to be more engaged with the department card managers as part of the approval on an Amazon account, at least the initial account. So that's something that's on our radar, and we're looking at it. But otherwise, just a reminder, I'm always available. Members of the team are on and always available. We're here to make things, better and help the mission of the institution. So appreciate the time. And, happy to take any questions if there are any.
I don't see anything in the chat. So thank you, Aaron. And we, of course, always appreciate that you regularly take the time to be available to this group and provide updates. So thank you for that. Up next, we will hear from Eric Ferguson and Ann Jennings-Schaefer with updates regarding international employment. Ann and Eric, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Ferguson, and I'm here today with Ann Jennings, Associate Director of Compliance. I am the coordinator for international employment, and we're here today to talk to you about international employment. In this post-pandemic global community where many can work from anywhere, we're seeing increased cross-border employment. I've been with the university for a little over 4 years. Prior to this role, it's a new role that I entered into in August. It's a new role for the university, so to speak. Before that, I was a talent acquisition partner for IHR. I've been in human resource for over 25 years, and I have a global professional certification. Before U of I was a branch manager for Manpower in Champaign and Rantoul. I was involved on some number of committees, including 2 global related, and I've got quite a bit of hands-on employment law knowledge. Before that, I had 2 years experience processing GI Bill benefits. And on the side, I worked a couple of summers in Germany and France, and got a news article published about the 2000 World Cup. Amazing game between Germany and Argentina, and then Ukraine and Italy, where I met a lot of Ukrainians. And one of my favorite countries is Vietnam. And so, what do? I started off the presentation with a dot that said a starting point, and really that's what I'm proposed to be, is I can be a first point of contact for you or your unit in regards to any inquiries related to international employment. And this is, violates every rule of PowerPoint presentation. This is from my job description, a little bit consolidated. I'm here to communicate international employment services, coordinate across system and the 3 campuses, and then establish, best practices. I coordinate with other units and teams. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And going forward, going to develop some strategic plans involving contracts and permanent establishment exposure, and I can get into a little bit of that later. And we're going to be working and updating the website, for job aids and checklists. So, one of my main roles right now is to chair the out of country employment committee. And we come together weekly and we review cross-border employment issues. And, I work closely with council on all 3 campuses, as well as tax and payroll and export compliance across the 3 campuses. And, what we're doing is we're trying to limit the liability to the Board of Trustees in a nutshell. And the committee is made up of stakeholders across the 3 campuses. For UIC, John Alsterda and another council, Gabby Levy, and then campus HR, Amra, Arwa, and Odell, and then export control is Patricia Pfister. And then for the Springfield campus, we have that's a little outdated. Nicholas Dabbs is no longer on the committee, but everyone else is. Melissa Malinsky, Rhonda Perry participate, as well as Lydia Schillinger, Lucia Vasquez, and then Lucia really deals with the export control issues for UIS, and then Mackenzie Westlake. And then system is represented by University Payroll Benefits, Cami Anders and Derek Rikoshi. Tax is represented by Treasury Operations, Terry Thompson and Brenda Sutherland. And then, Ann and Angela Foster and I rounded up. And so, what do? We, what I do is, I assist units to get the process going. And then, I bring, the information to the committee and we look at it from, different points of view. Export compliance is typically a day 1 issue. Permanent establishment risk and tax can, that comes in later, can be, we usually look at that at, 60 days out. Of course, employment issues, start on day 1. And so, we're looking at a lot of different issues. University Council has a contract with Baker McKenzie, which is a global employment and labor law firm. And really, we rely on them. I'll be sharing some issues that we've gone through recently. We rely on them for counsel on, on anything international. And the relationship is managed through University Council, and basically the lawyers own the communication. And so if someone has a question, we would go to, John's team at UIC, or Austin Hill for UIUS, and then Rhonda Perry for Springfield. We are setting up vendors. Currently, 1 unit is using a professional employment organization called the MOV Group. They're out of the UK. They operate globally. And then right now, nothing's finished, but IPEC has an RFP. The response stage just ended, I think, yesterday. And they're going to be moving to, set up temporary service vendors that, might be of use, in the future for units, depending on the situation. Anne, anything that I left off here about vendors or anything else so far?
No, you're doing great.
Good. I have a Zoom meeting on and I can't hear it and I don't know why.
I'm not sure what to say, Heather. Am I coming through for otherwise for anyone else? Am I coming through, or?
Yeah, we hear you clearly.
Okay. Heather, there's usually in the Zoom meetings, there's audio instructions where you could call in using a phone. Sometimes that's in the calendar invite. maybe someone can email her the call-in instructions for audio. Sometimes that's a good workaround. So we are building up country knowledge. One of my responsibility is to, maintain an awareness of issues on a country by country basis. As I said, more and more we are seeing cross-border employment requests. Something that makes cross-border employment different than, out of state is, when we have someone working in Indiana, they're going to get paid dollars. Indiana is governed by, federal law, just like Illinois. In Illinois, we have a lot of state-specific laws like, our own minimum wage. And then another good example is VESA, the Victims of Abuse Act. But in other countries, there's 209, different countries, and each one can be very different. And how they treat employees can be different, just depending on, different statuses. For example, in Hungary, a mother up to, a new mother up to, being a mother of a 3-year-old toddler has rights about, not working on Sundays, for example. And each country just has many different situations. And so when we want to understand, what our risks are and what the liabilities can be for the Board of Trustees, and sometimes it can be pretty expensive, depending on the situation. A while back, we opened up, for lack of a better word, a permanent establishment status in Spain. We pay corporate income tax there. We have payroll there, and we have to use an accounting firm. Spain, just like just like when you hire someone in Illinois, you have to report that new hire to the state of Illinois. Spain has different reporting that anyone doing business there is required to do. And it was important for the unit, and it got set up, and it was $150,000. And so we now have a official status in Spain. We have someone in Germany who's a student worker, and we do not have permanent establishment there, and that's documented. And in Singapore, there's something developing there, an LLC, Illinois Global Gateway, and they are developing something called a WOFI, which is a wholly owned foreign-owned establishment for China. And that is in the works, where we will have a different status in China in the future through the Illinois Global Gateway LLC. Different countries present different challenges to us. One of them for example, in Canada, if we have someone in Quebec, even the law is different. In the United States, we have common law. In Quebec, it's different. It's civil code based on French law. Most of our employees right now, I shouldn't say most, but we have many in the United Kingdom, and they have rules about what a risk assessment has to be done for all work sites. And so that's why it's important, to understand, to work with your unit if they, have a need for someone in another country to be working in some capacity, that, we understand that, so we can go in and do it right, pay the person what they should be paid, and manage our liability and risk for the Board of Trustees.
Eric, I'm gonna jump in here just
yeah.
As Eric mentioned at the beginning, with the pandemic, of course, we're seeing a lot more activity and a lot more requests for employees to be working outside of the country. and it's showing no signs of that slowing down. And it's not really practical for us to have a physical presence in every single country. And one of the things that Eric and I are working on and will probably bring to fruition here within the next year is contracting, actually going through an RFP process and contracting for what's called a professional employment organization, or a PEO. And that type of organization actually does have entities and can do business in almost all countries. And so we would work through them to be able to maintain the compliance and actually do the end-to-end hiring, payroll, HR rules compliance, employment law compliance. And that will take a lot of pressure off of the University of Illinois for having to even try to have a large base of locations in different countries, like we do in Spain, for example. So there will be more to come. And of course, we've always had employees that have worked outside of the country. It's just now there are so many more of them that it really is putting pressure on not only our operations, but being able to keep up with the compliance demands, both from an HR knowledge perspective, a tax perspective, and a payroll perspective. So I'll turn it back to you, Eric.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was great. You know, in the course of working with me, you know, there are some, you know, other subject matter experts we might need to involve. Something that's gaining, you know, more and more importance is something, you know, data privacy. And something that, you know, we're dealing with is, you know, GDPR. In the United States, we have the FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is actually an extraterritorial law. So, you know, if a company has a CEO or an officer working in another country, they still have to comply with the FCPA, you know, if they're in another country. This is the EU's, you know, legislation that actually follows, you know, citizens outside the EU and affects, you know, organizations that are operating in the EU. And it's becoming, you know, important in other countries. Canada has their own data privacy laws. Thailand has adopted one that's very similar to the EU. And once the United Kingdom left the EU, theirs is modeled on the EU. And then California is not its own country, but they have a lot of special laws, and they actually are developing data privacy laws that will probably impact us in the future, and probably Illinois will be next to implement something. So this is something else that we have to consider about, is what kind of data might an employee being used? How's it being transmitted? What's the relationship of the employee to the university? And so David Grogan and Megan Stoll are experts on that. They're in UIUC Council. They're super to work with. And, you know, if you ever had any questions, please reach out to them. Another important aspect is international safety and security. Above all, it's important that anyone we have is safe and secure wherever they are, whether it's in the United States on campus or in their home working. And for UIUC, a point of contact is Andrew Collum. There is not a specific, his position, which is international safety and security, there is not a specific position like that on the UIUC campuses, but I understand that a point of contact might be, you know, for the UIS campus, Jonathan Goldberg Bell, I am told, and then Neil McCrillis for UIC, and how Andrew Collum, his role would be, unit was going to send a couple of people to work in Uganda. And, you know, Andrew, you know, made sure that they knew that, you know, right now there's Ebola, you know, on top of the pandemic and everything else. that country is dealing with Ebola. And so, that's something to also, consider when, dealing with international employment. And that's a subject matter expert. And then some interesting examples and policies to share is because we're a higher educational institution and teaching and is our core at what we do. There's been a decision, a policy by Office of the Provost that the university will not have faculty employed through a third party. And, so if there is a faculty in another country, they would have to be employed in some fashion by U of I. As I mentioned, a unit is using a MOV group to employ someone in another country. And in the United Kingdom, someone went there to work, and we worked with Baker McKenzie to draft up. We learned that we should have an employment contract with them that governs, specifies how many hours, and that the employee is required to pay into the pension, and that's all outlined in the letter. Another example is the Japan House has an employee in Japan. That person is legally eligible to work in Japan, as well as for the United States. So Baker McKenzie, showed us how to employ that person in Japan and outline what the responsibilities would be to the by the university if the person was to leave employment. And an interesting situation just to show, how each country is, completely different. We have someone working as a research student in Norway on an island called Svalbard. And when this came to me, I didn't think much about, the island Svalbard. I just, okay, this person's in Norway. And it turns out that, in Norway, if a student is working, it's not considered employment. And so U of I is able to legally pay this person, for the work doing as a student, and we're not assuming any kind of risk with the Kingdom of Norway. And on this island, Svalbard, it's actually visa free. Anyone can basically go to the island. There's no need to worry about any kind of visa for the employee. Or in work in any way. And so, those are the things, that, we uncover and document, as we do this. And so, now we have some country knowledge if someone else was to go to Norway and, do research, on that island, we're already up and running on that. Those are some examples there. And that really brings us to the end where we began. Ann and I would be a starting point for you. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Eric and Ann. If there are additional questions, Eric, they may pop into the chat. I don't know if you have time to, to stay on just in case, but if not, we can definitely collect those questions and get back to you.
Super.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
So we will now hear from Derek Briles from System Office Shared Services with an update on the Certified Business Administrator program refresh project.
Looks like Derek is having a little bit of an issue with his audio, so let me just message him really quick. He will present. He's the project manager for this project. So what we would like to present to you today is the reason for this CBA refresh project and what we've done so far, and where we're heading with this. So if Derek, if you can hear us again, let me know.
Yeah, sorry, Zoom crashed on me there, but I'm back now.
All right, thank you.
So yeah, thanks everybody for taking some time to listen to the Path today. I guess you didn't really have a choice on that. And I'm blocked up again. If you can still hear me, I apologize. My computer
Yep, we can hear you.
completely locked up. Bernadette, you might have to display those slides for me because every time I present my screen, Zoom crashes on me.
Yes, no problem.
I don't know what that's about. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, so yes, I'm Derek Riles, Assistant Director with System Office Shared Services and the Project Manager for the CBA Path. You can go ahead forward, Bernadette. So yeah, we'll be talking a little about what the Certified Business Administrator Path is, if you haven't heard of it. We'll talk a little bit about the refresh project that we have going on right now to improve the CBA Path, and then we'll give you some information about the upcoming cohort that will begin later this fall. So the CBA Path is a 9-month training program. It has about 25 to 27 courses in it that usually get delivered across 9 months in about 14 to 18 sessions. So sometimes 2 to 3 courses per session. It is specifically directed at folks like you, business managers, and other business and finance professionals. Its overall goal is to produce a more consistent and standardized approach to the business and finance procedures across the U of I system. So the 3 universities, as well as the system offices. And ultimately what that's intended to do, right, is improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the university and return resources back to the university. For those of you here that have participated, I do recognize some of these names. You'll be aware of the CBA alumni group. So anyone that graduates from the CBA Path is immediately inducted to an alumni group. And then we use those alumni for a lot of system-wide projects. They're sort of the brain trust for a lot of the business and finance projects that we do, like the OBFS website redesign, and the internal controls initiative, lots and lots of training projects all run through them for their input. All right, next slide. So what is the CBA Path Refresh Project and why are we doing it? So we've run the CBA Path for about 4 years and it's been largely successful, positive feedback from participants and instructors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't room for improvement. We're constantly striving for improvement in everything that we do. And over the years, we have gotten some comments from participants, from instructors, and from the project team on areas of opportunity that we could take advantage of. And so specifically, that boils down to the efficiency and effectiveness I was just talking about. So by efficiency, in this context, we mean reducing the time commitment from participants. So all those cohort members and the amount of time that they have to put in to participate in the program, but also the instructors and the project team. There are 96 different instructors that help us develop and deliver courses for this. And it's a lot of work for them. And they all obviously all have day jobs outside of this. So we definitely want to reduce the impact on their time. But predominantly and most interesting to you all is the effectiveness, right? We want to improve the learning experience as well as the learning retention for all participants. And we're targeting that specifically by increasing interactivity and engagement with instructors. So there'll be a little less lecture and a little bit more interactivity with these courses. So this is going on now. We're actively working with a lot of our instructors now to update their courses. And by the end of this, we'll have, I think, 26, 27 completely refreshed courses, sort of built from the ground up. So that'll all be launched in September, in which we'll have a sort of a brand new CBA path that we are essentially sort of repiloting now with this new approach. Go ahead forward. So what does this mean for you? We will begin the application and selection process in the spring. So that'll be around the March, April timeframe. You'll start seeing communications from us about applying to the CBA path. There are some new requirements that are a little different this year than they have been previously. You now have to have 2 years of business and finance experience, specifically at the University of Illinois, before you can get selected to participate in the program. And that's just intended for us to more specifically address that business manager audience, right? And it's so the instructors know who their audience is and they can tailor their materials specifically to that. Because if not, it's really hard to make effective materials for such a wide audience. For those who don't meet that requirement, that's not a problem. I've just put a link in the chat. We have a lot of other certification trainings in the program that are open to everybody. We highly recommend looking at those. If you don't qualify for the CBA path, or even if you do and you're looking for other opportunities or you need to learn more about business and finance. We will be sending a lot of communications starting this month. You'll see more information about the refresh project and the upcoming cohort. So keep an eye out for those. They should be going through Business and Finance News as well as through the BMG AFO groups. So like I mentioned, this will begin in September and it will run through May of 2024. And in addition to updating the courses, we're also looking at improvements in the overall program administration. So there are other background processes that should be easier for everyone to engage with and have been in previous years. And for the program evaluation, we definitely we've always really focused on evaluation with participants, but this year we'll have a heightened focus on that, given the amount of changes that we're going through. So we'll really be engaging participants a lot in evaluating how effective these changes have been to see if we need to continue them in subsequent years or if there are other improvements that we need to put into place. And I see a question in the chat which relates to this directly, that yes, we will be making these courses available to alumni. We haven't worked out all of those details yet. But we'll be sharing it with alumni soon, that in each session, there will be a certain number of seats that will be held for the alumni. Because one, we want to make sure you get to take advantage of all of the new material that's getting created. But having gone through this path before, we really want your input on how you think it is compared to what it was like when you went through. So great question, and that's an exciting new opportunity that we're hoping to roll out soon. So go ahead to the next slide, which I think might just be questions. Yes.
And Derek, there is another question. One of the questions in the chat is the refresh CBA path for the new or current CBA. I think there may have been a little confusion.
So it starts in September. So there's no CBA path running right now. This new program will start in September. I see a question from Alex about the materials link. I would say to check that link again because we have not changed it in some years. And I'll put that in the chat here as well. Let's see, what else do we have? Can we make the CBA required for preferred requirements civil service positions? I think that's a great question. It's definitely something we've talked about, Richard, but that's more of an HR question about what they would like to do. We have talked to various HR representatives in the past about this, and it's certainly something you can do at a departmental or college level. If you would like to put that as a preferred requirement, particularly if you would put it as a preferred requirement that someone would have to achieve that in a set amount of time after being hired, a year, 2 years. That's definitely, I think, an interesting thing to consider, but I definitely would recommend talking to HR about that before trying to move forward with anything like that. And then, yes, it'll start in September and it'll run through May of 2024. So it's a 9-month program. And I think this year there'll be about 14 sessions. And then Alex, I can work with you on the side with that. It is a tenancy issue. Unfortunately, there is no neutral SharePoint. There is no neutral Microsoft anything within the U of I system. We operate as 3 separate universities. So unfortunately, there's not like a neutral space where we can host these things, but I will get a hold of you on the side to address that issue. Which is also a good point that you're bringing up, because that is another one of the administrative improvements that we're trying to get away from. We do want to get away from SharePoint, since it does have this known tenancy issue. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks everybody for your time. And if you have any questions about any of this, you please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Derek. So already lots of good information today and lots to absorb. And next up, we will hear from Brian Zunt from the Office of Business Services, our System Policy Office, with some business and financial policy updates.
Thank you, Ginger. A few items to share with the group today. The Policy Office is currently working with subject matter experts to refine the language of Policy 8.4.7, Electronic Codes for Human Subjects, as well as expanding the use of e-codes. E-codes can be thought of as electronic gift cards, and only Amazon e-codes are currently being considered. The open comment period for Policy 12.5.2, Expensed Lease or Housing Stipend for a non-university owned residence or apartment, what a mouthful, has concluded, and the SMEs, subject matter experts, are currently reviewing the comments that were submitted. The second half of the process to change the policy manual language in total from TEM to Chrome River has concluded, and the impacted policies are currently being prepared for publication. And finally, the Policy Office continues its revised annual policy review process with input from the Policy Advisory Group and review of subject matter experts responsible for each of the section's contents. We are working our way through the policy manual, making language and format improvements, as well as identifying any business practices in need of change or further review. As always, if you have any questions about the items I've discussed or any other policy issues, please feel free to contact me directly or any other member of the Policy Office, Stacy Balmez and Zach Langheim. As always, thank you for the time on the agenda to provide this update.
Thanks for the updates, Brian. And we are at the point in the agenda now where we are just going to take a quick 5-minute break. So I've got 1:44. Let's be back at 1:50 and we will hear from payables as soon as we return. So back online by 1:50. Thank you. Okay. It looks like we've already got the presentation up and running. You're already ahead of schedule, Melissa. And just as a quick introduction, up next, we have Melissa Plotner with our friends at University Payables, and Melissa is going to provide a Chrome River update.
Thanks, Ginger. I also have Jim Martini with me. So if we have any questions, we're both here and able to answer those in the chat. But a few quick updates from the Chrome River side of the house. We were pretty busy and active leading up to the December holiday break. And so we have quite a few things in the works that have occurred or will be occurring shortly. But last meeting, we talked about the customer advisory group. And one of the items that we were discussing and working on in that group was the business purpose field in Chrome River. And if you have created an expense report, you know, once the line items were added to that report, you could not go back and edit any of the header screen information. And one of those fields was the business purpose. And so there was a lot of feedback from the user community that, you know, it would be nice that we could make a change and not have to remove all of the items that we've already put on the expense report. So effective on December 12th, that field was unlocked and a communication went out to all active Chrome River users that field now could be updated and edited. But I do want to caution everyone that with that change, it does impact the system functionality a little bit. So Chrome River is designed to take that business purpose and carry it forward throughout the document. And it will still do that. And you will still have the ability to edit or change the business purpose for each specific line item. But once you have those items added to your report and you were to go back to the very beginning, the header screen, and change that business purpose, it does not update the line items that you already have added. So I just want to caution everybody that while we did open that feature up, it'll still be very important to make sure that each expense is adequately described if it's different than what has been carried forward already. The next exciting thing that we're working on is the adding of merchant name for card transactions in Chrome River. The data that we work with in Chrome River is stored differently than how we used to store information for TEM. While we're working on adding this merchant name, it will be available in the reporting software. It'll be available in Banner. It will look a little bit different than what it did in TEM. So the vendor name will still show as the cardholder's information, but the merchant name will be placed in the commodity field in the description of that line item. There is a communication that will go out. It will have screenshots. It'll show you what it looks like. It'll discuss the change. That will be sent out as soon as we know we're ready to move forward. There were a couple of things that had to happen within the data warehouse so that we didn't crash some of their reporting. And so as soon as those updates are made, then we will go back and get this merchant name added. AITS has worked many hours on trying to get this accomplished. And one of the real benefits, I think, to this is that this is going to be retroactively applied. So it may take a couple days for everything to get loaded. And then once it starts loading, there will be a small delay. But this will go all the way back to everything that was submitted since February when Chrome River went live. All right, so another exciting thing that happened right before break, for those of you that work in the invoice module or the non-PO payments happening in Chrome River, is we were able to add in active UINs for employees and students. So we learned quickly that there was a need for employees that were participating as human subjects, or students had some sort of key refund or return that was owed to them. All of those various things that we would pay a UIN for, they were not available in the invoice module. So there was quite a bit of data entry happening to pay those individuals as temp vendors. Now those have been loaded, so they can be selected from the list. I do want to note that individuals will be listed last name, comma, first name. But if you select them from the system, this allows that payment to go in whichever payment method they've selected. For employees, it would be direct deposit. A lot of students have elected to use direct deposit, but those instructions are tied to their UIN. The other great benefit is that you no longer have to enter their payment address into the comments field. That will pull in from their active addresses in Banner. And then we continue to work on our data warehouse and reporting capabilities. There has been a lot of user suggestions come in. I know the data warehouse team has been soliciting reporting needs from various units. They have wrapped those up in September, and they've been working all of that forward. So hopefully in the near future, spring timeline, that we'll have the Chrome River data available in the EDW. And that is the updates I have for today. I don't know if Jim wants to add anything, or if anybody has any questions, please feel free to enter those in the chat.
Thanks for the great updates, Melissa. And I don't see anything in the chat yet. So we'll keep going and watch and monitor that. So next up, we have purchasing and contract management updates from Deborah Matlock, Aaron Rosenthal, and Jill Menezes.
Unmute. Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Matlock. I'm Executive Director of UIC Purchasing and Contract Management. And with me today, I have Aaron Rosenthal, the Senior Associate Director for UIC Purchasing and Contract Management, and Jill Menezes, who is Director for UIS Purchasing and Contract Management. We're going to lead off with talking about some legislative updates, and then Jill and Aaron are going to coordinate on talking about some contracts plus tips and tricks. Thanks, Aaron, for advancing the slides. So I had previously talked about updates as a result of HB 2770 that was effective January 1st of this year. I'm going to only highlight or restate some of those changes that would be most relevant to this audience. First of all, we must publish the notice of exempt procurements with an annual value of more than $100,000. The main reason why this is important is so that people understand, and I made this presentation 2 months ago, that exempt procurements will not be effective immediately, as we had attempted to process them within 24 to 48 hours of the time that we had received the request. They are now subject to review by both the Procurement Policy Board as well as the Commission on Equity and Inclusion. And that means that we have to wait 14 days before exemptions can be effective from date of publishing. We have to wait to see if either one of those oversight entities has either comments, questions, or waives their review, but we have to wait the full 14 days. So please plan accordingly. Secondly, change orders apply to increases only. Change orders previously were required if there was a increase or decrease in the amount of an award, of a contract, of $10,000 or more, or if there was a change in the dates for delivery, that provision has been changed. Third, standard Illinois certifications must be provided now for small purchases over $50,000. So that means if your cumulative small purchases for a particular project or vendor will exceed $50,000, they now require Illinois certifications to be provided. It previously was for all small purchases of any value. Fourth, this has previously been discussed, but we can in fact not execute a renewal of a competitively solicited award if the vendor has failed to meet the goal in the U plan, unless it's determined that the vendor has made good faith efforts and a waiver of such BEP goals is issued with the concurrence of the CPO. Fifth, the CPO concurrence on such renewals shall not be unreasonably withheld or impair our determination to execute a renewal. And the CPO must post their prescribed waiver form within 5 days of receipt of it from the university. We don't generally have any issues with the CPO. He generally does concur on any procurements for which we have requested a waiver and used his form. Of interest to anyone who is contemplating additional new construction, leases may now exceed 10 years, which was previously the Illinois Procurement Code restriction, and can be issued for can be entered into for up to 30 years for any higher ed uses for healthcare, academic, dormitory, or other support. Let's get to work on that new ARC. Okay, next, thanks. Previously, financial disclosures were required for all bids, offers, and contracts with an annual value in excess of 100,000, in excess of $50,000. Now the law has been changed that financial disclosures are only required for bids, offers, and contracts, or any combination thereof that exceed $100,000. Now, it is noteworthy that there are no changes in terms of the requirements for Board of Election registration that is still at $50,000, for certificates of good standing from the state and from Illinois Department of Human Rights requirements if the vendor in fact has more than 15 employees. So none of those requirements have changed. And then the State Procurement Task Force was in fact created by the law. That was to be effective upon the effectiveness of, when the legislation was signed into law. And the chair of the Commission on Equity and Inclusion served as a chair of that task force. Their first report was due November 1st of last year. However, that was changed as a result of legislation that was just signed on January 5th to require their first report to be February 1st of this year to the Governor and General Assembly. Next slide. So HB 4285, which had been worked on very diligently for probably the past 2 years by Aaron Carter. He has led a lot of the discussions with the legislature on this particular bill and was integral in getting it passed by both houses as of January 5th in the lame duck session, and we are awaiting governor's signature. It is intended to be effective as of January 1st of this year. There are specific additions and revisions made to the Illinois Procurement Code in this legislation. Some of the most notable ones is that expenditures for any ongoing software license or maintenance agreement for competitively solicited or a competitively solicited software purchase is now exempt when the software license or maintenance agreement is available only through the software creator or its manufacturer and not a reseller. The reason why this is significant is some of you may remember that when we had to buy software, while it might have been exempt, or if we bought equipment for which there was integrated software, the equipment may have been exempt. I always like to use the example of the surgical robots. So that equipment, the robots were exempt because they were used for direct patient care. However, the prior CPO had required that the software license and any maintenance agreements for the software or that equipment had to, in fact, be handled through a separate procurement vehicle, generally through a sole source or sole economically feasible source. With the new chief procurement officer, he has reviewed such requirements for software or ongoing maintenance on a case-by-case basis to determine if, in fact, they can just be included in the exemption that we are putting forth for the equipment itself. And so this now codifies this in law, that we can do this as a single procurement. It also is now clear by law that expenditures incurred for the recruitment of international students are in fact exempt from the Illinois Procurement Code. Previously, we had a provision in the procurement code that covered such recruitment, say through the Shorelight program, because if we did anything in a foreign country, then we were only required to adhere to the Illinois Procurement Code where practicable. And so we had relied on that specific provision to cover our activities with Shorelight such that we did not have to meet all of the procurement code requirements. But this gives us another source of cover, shall we say, to allow us to continue those activities. The 1-13B5 exemption, which is well known by UI Health and all of our medical activities, that in fact exempts any contracts for medical supplies or services necessary for the direct delivery of care and treatment, has been expanded to include any additional services that the operator of the facility, which is very interesting. I'm not sure who the operator of the facility is. I'm not sure if that means CEO Mike Zen or otherwise, but any services or supplies that are deemed necessary for the effective use and continued functioning of the medical supplies or services. So once again, this is similar to where we had previously had to operate with a separate procurement vehicle for software or maintenance of equipment or supplies. And now the code has made this specifically exempt. Notice of an emergency must be posted in the bulletin no later than 5 days after the contract is awarded. And there's also changed that notice of an extension must be posted to the bulletin no later than 7 days after the extension is executed. This does not change the requirements that an extension of an emergency is subject to hearing, in which any member of the public can in fact give testimony. And then it is further subject to the approval of the chief procurement officer prior to that extension being effective. And this just codifies that prior to the extension, the CPO must receive written justification for the extension, and the duration of the extension shall be limited to the scope of the emergency. Generally, how the chief procurement officer views that limited to the scope of the emergency is as long as it would take for us to do a competitive procurement. There is now potential administrative relief for conflicts of interest that are related to procurements under $5,000. There previously was no such relief for any types of conflicts of interest at any dollar value of procurements. This is the specific provision that has extended the due date by which the first report of the procurement task force is due, and it is extended from November 1st of 22 to February 1st of this year. There has been some additional changes to the Business Enterprise for Minorities, Women, and Persons with Disabilities Act. Now the cap for companies that can in fact participate as certified BEP vendors has been raised such that they can have revenue gross sales up to $150 million rather than $75 million. And this allows a greater capitalization of BEP firms such that they did not graduate out once they had become successful and in fact could report gross revenues of greater than $75 million. They would have effectively graduated out of the BEP program and then required special certification to be deemed a BEP certified vendor for purposes of counting spend with them. There's also provisions that have been added that allows firms to cure deficiencies in their utilization plans. It gives them a 10-day notice of cure period in which they can in fact cure deficiencies by adding BEP certified vendors. So they can in fact prefer additional BEP vendors. It doesn't allow them to in fact go the other way and reduce the amount of or increase the amount of waiver that they were requesting. And then travel reimbursement rates for lodging, mileage, and meals have been equalized at the state level to the federal government's levels for such reimbursements. And the State Property Control Act has in fact changed that an item is now deemed of nominal value for purposes of this act if it has a value of less than $2,500, which previously was $1,000. Now I think I get to turn it. Okay. The criminal code has changed as it applies to the procurement code's change order related requirements, so that you one would have to have in writing any change that was $25,000 or greater instead of $10,000 or greater. And if the period of performance was greater than 30 days, is now up to 180 days. Again, we are only required by the procurement code to post changes that are increases in value versus decreases. Take it away, Aaron and Jill.
Thank you, Deborah, and good afternoon, everyone. We wanted to end today's presentation with some tips and tricks for Contracts Plus, which is our contract management system. UIC has now been live in the system for quite some time, and really UIC users are doing an amazing job. We do receive, though, some of the same questions from users on a regular basis, and we're hoping that sharing some of these tips today is going to help you all gain additional value from the system. First, I'm going to talk about the high-level Contracts Plus workflow. In Contracts Plus, the path to contract execution involves two types of documents. Number one, there is what is called a contract request, and number two, a contract. And each of those two documents has its own workflow. So to follow the entire life cycle from request to fully executed contract, you really need to monitor progress on each of those two documents. The request for contract processing begins with what's fittingly called a contract request. There's an example displayed on the screen, and notably a contract request has its own form number, as well as overall workflow that can be seen by clicking the contract request workflow section. Please note the example that I'm showing is a University of Illinois Chicago contract request. So a quick disclaimer for our colleagues at UIS who are on the meeting today. Your workflow looks a little bit different, and Jill Menezes from University of Illinois Springfield Purchasing and Contract Management can address any specific questions about the nuances of your workflow. On this next screen, though, I'm showing another example of a contract request workflow. But on this one, we can see that the last step of the contract request workflow, called contract request assignment, has been approved. When the contract coordinator approves the contract request in that step, a couple important things happen. First, a contract number that begins with CN is generated, which you can see highlighted in yellow. But most notably, the contract coordinator approves the contract request to begin processing the contract. We get a lot of questions from users saying, we got an email notification that the contract request was approved or completed. And does that mean that the contract is now fully executed? And we can understand why with the system notifications that could be a little bit confusing. But again, the big takeaway is that completing or approving the contract request is really the start of the core process and not the end. To then follow the rest of the process, the user will please click the CN contract number that appears on the contract request, which will then take them to the contract. All of the remaining workflow now can be seen on the contract instead of the contract request. It's only when the contract is approved and fully executed that the contract request is completed. All of that, again, is to say that the biggest takeaway is contract requests being approved do not mean that the contract request is over. It just means that the process is starting. Finally, a few additional lightning round tips. Number one, the non-university party to the contract, which we call the second party, must be established in Contracts Plus before a contract request can be submitted. Please allow sufficient time if the second party is not already in the system to complete a vendor information form and allow for sufficient time for processing. Next, we run into quite a few situations where contract requests end up failing or auto-returning to the user due to a missing unit approver. So please make sure that you always have at least 2 people in the system at every level of unit approver. Lastly, the Contracts Plus website has a ton of valuable information, including training and security information and additional guidance on everything that I'm talking about today. Now we've got Jill on the line as well. Jill, is there anything you'd like to add for Springfield?
No, thank you, Aaron, for giving that explanation of the workflow, just so that the UIS users are aware. The difference in the workflow is the contract request form is submitted to purchasing and contract management after the requester hits the submit button. And then when the contract is ready for execution, then the approvals from the unit will come in, and depending on the dollar amount, and after we receive those approvals, then the contract will be able to be signed. So there's just a slight difference. The approvals remain the same for a contract at UIS, and I just wanted to point out that difference to everybody for UIS.
No, thank you, Jill. I see a couple of questions in the chat. One from Rodney Chambers asking us to go back to the slide about property control. I don't know, Rodney, if you had a more specific question, I just wanted to confirm the change.
The HB 4285, item of nominal value in terms of bank value of less than 2,500, right? Question for you all and Jeff Weaver, how does this affect property accounting and biennial? Jeff is on. Jeff, are you on?
I am, Rodney. I'm not aware. It changes your biennial. Again, the current state threshold and university threshold is that anything costing $1,000 or more must be added to the university inventory, got the P tag and tracked. So I'm really not sure the implications of what this means to that. And really, I don't think it is going to impact. I think you got to keep tracking all your equipment that's on your inventory as always. Thanks.
All right. That's it. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Aaron.
I know. Thanks, Rodney. Thanks, Jeff. I see a question from Alex as well as a comment. Alex was wondering, how do we get to the CN number once the contract request disappears from my contracts requests? The best practice is to keep a record of that contract request number, and you have the ability with the quick search at the upper right-hand corner of the iBuy screen to pull up that contract request number. Like what was shown on the contract request screen, if we look at this second one that I have displayed on the screen, if I pulled up this contract request manually by number, I could then see the related contract number, the CN number, once it's generated, and follow through by clicking to see the actual contract as well. But happy to follow up offline to better understand what you're experiencing. And also the very great recommendation, Alex, thanks for the bonus tip here, to always make sure that your chart number is correct on your contract request. We have seen a number of contract requests end up in interesting places, and it's because the chart field wasn't filled in correctly. Here in Chicago, we are at chart 2, and that, along with the other pieces of information, will help ensure that your contract request ends up in the right place. Thanks, Alex. Great suggestion.
Okay. So thank you, Deborah, Aaron, and Jill for those updates. And now we will turn our attention to Shauna Claiborne from the Office of Procurement and Diversity, who will introduce us to multi-Latino marketing.
Awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to pull up someone's still presenting, or is that me? That's not me. There we go. Yes, if I could just pull up a information flyer for our event real quick before I introduce our firm. Share. All right. Hopefully you see the 2023 Diversity Healthcare Expo on my screen or on your screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome, thank you. So real quick, I am Shauna Claiborne, Supply Diversity Coordinator for the Office of Procurement Diversity. Some of you may have received an email already inviting you to attend the event. So if you are responsible for purchasing healthcare related goods and services for your department, you will want to register for the event taking place on February 17th at Student Center West. And we actually are collaborating with Congressman Danny Davis's office, the Chicago Inventors Organization, and UI Health. We did have this event a couple years ago. So now we are hopefully bringing in some new innovative technology and solutions for some of your healthcare and medical needs. So I just wanted to send that or show that real quick. I will follow up with a communication sent via the BMG listserv with the registration link, and I'll throw it in the chat as well. It does take a couple minutes to fill out the registration, so just heads up. So if you don't have time right now, of course, I will send this out in just a few. And then now I would like to turn it over to Multi-Latino Marketing. They know a thing or two about creative marketing strategies. So for a wide range of budgets and industries. So I'll turn it over to, we have Melina and Jasmine here today. Hi, ladies.
Hi. Hi, Shanna. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today and have this presentation, as well as all of you. We appreciate the time. My name is Milena Toes, and I'm president and founder of Multi-Latino Marketing. And I'm gonna share a little bit about how Multi-Latino marketing started. And about a little bit about me. For my early age, I was not so good at sport, even though that I was a basketball player, and my team usually won. But I noticed that I was very good in doing connection and in planning the get together with my friends, and they usually name me as part of the coordinator and putting together the big events at the school at that time that included all the logistics and budgets for them. And during the early years of my marketing career, I took every single challenge that was presented to me. I am not gonna lie to you that as Latina and with my English as a second language, I needed to double proof myself, especially 30 years ago when mujeres and Latinas or diversity was not much in the conversation. About 20 years ago, I embraced my vision of having my own business, another big challenge, but today I have so much gratitude to different clients like Verizon, Xfinity, Coca-Cola, Sinai, Chicago, Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and many others that trusted me to be part of their journey and for many years, and to create different programs that put their brands ahead of the game. Since also to their business opportunity, I have been able to mentor many young talents that today are shining and successfully performing in their careers. I really admire your system. I think UIC has the greatest system in Illinois and not only in Chicago, but globally. And I have a dream that I could belong to that system one day. Now, also have a question for all of you. I know there is so many good things going on in the different departments. So Jasmine can share a question in the chat. That is, what stories or accomplishment you have in your department that you would like to share with the community? So it would be interesting to learn from you some of your accomplishments, and I'm sure there are many, and what are important to be shared in the community. As part of the Multi-Latino marketing, we are a minority certified woman-owned business that put together marketing concepts, especially in the multicultural marketing. We provide services with a proactive approach and leverage media buys to 10 to 15% to maximize return of investment. We are very creative and very unique in putting the campaigns together that not only cover media and digital, but also we can integrate the community at the community level. We really embrace diversity, knowing the culture, the passions, building the relationships, that all of these are really put together the multicultural community to create experiences that resonate with your target audience. As part of our services, we really cover different areas of the marketing spectrum, creating marketing strategies, media planning and buying, all the digital programmatic advertising, social media, as well as grassroots programs and PR campaigns. Digital programmatic is one of the areas that we, in the past 7 years, I would say, we have been focusing a lot of efforts. And why? We all know that we spend so much time in our phones, computers, tablets, and everything is just in today's days really related with digital. So we are using all the different tactics because these areas have different benefits, like it's very targeted. Each campaign is tailored to your audience, to the needs and location and interest, as well as we can optimize all the different performance of the campaign in a daily basis, as well as generate leads, all the metrics and conversions that we looked into every single week to see how we're doing with the metric and conversions, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is take all the potentials take it to the down to the funnel to take action. In the next page, all of these tactics are really great to be using with all the different areas that you work, like a student recruitment, for example, faculty recruitment, promoting athletics, attracting more donors, or branding for new businesses. The new building, for example, the UI Health Specialty Care Building, or other areas that you have, so many other areas that you have, that these tactics are perfect in order to really be very targeted to maximize reach of the target audience. One of the latest in this digital has been the social display ads, and the way it works is very interesting because the post in social media, your post that has been doing really good, we can take those posts and it's a very low cost because the ad is already there. It's just the post that it can be shared in the rest of the internet. So we can use all the different tactics and put that post that performs really well and maximize that. And we have a sample that UI Health, for example, that post that performed really well before, immediately we notice when the post is doing well, so it can transfer to digital programmatic to use all the different tactics. So that way, the reach, we can maximize the reach. The other one here is one post of the new Atrium that is coming very soon and is doing really well. That's another sample that can be expanded to all the internet, to the different areas, put it in all the different areas to maximize reach. One of the case studies that I like to share with you is about the streaming TV. Streaming TV is an area that has been using very, very, in a very positive way for many clients. It's cheaper compared with the regular TV, and really the reach is amazing. This was a case of health category with one of the clients that wanted to reach out in the potentials for the orthopedic care services. We know doing the research that out of 4 people, 5 people out of 4, they always go online to do some research before looking for any specific services regarding medical. And, we went online and did a programmatic display in order to really make sure that what it was a specific target audience for this. And we were able to really identify people that were married, have higher education, over 35 years old, and has an income of estimated income of $50,000. So we use all the different tactics. One of them was addressable geofencing, that to identify all the different individuals in the areas that we needed to reach in a real-time basis. And we use more than 70, I would say, demographic in order to target them and to reach them. And as soon as the platform identified more than 300,000 relevant households that was our target audience, we also use, targets, fences around them to be able to use the retargeting. So in that way, we can maximize the exposure and engagement. Out of these, the results were amazing. We covered 96% of the video completion rate, and out of 90% that the client was expecting. All of these, we like to share that we don't only do digital, but also any kind of media, out of home, direct mail, CTA, or any other media, TV. We put the strategy together, and we buy any kind of media. I know time is, I have to respect for the time. Anything else, I like to share this information with you all for your records and references. And anything, I'll be happy to be contact and answer any questions or put any plan or a specific plan together. With this, I really appreciate if any of the questions have been answered, so that I can learn more about your departments and your interest in the university. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Any follow-up, Shauna?
No, thank you. If anybody has any questions, please follow up with Milena. And I don't see any stories or accomplishments that you would like to share with the community in the chat, but I just ask that everyone, keep an open mind and just really think about how you could utilize some of these different marketing advertising tactics. So that's all. Thank you, Ginger.
Yep. No, thank you for the presentation. That was great. So I would like to again thank all of our presenters today. There was a wealth of information. And also a thank you to all of the participants for coming today. We do appreciate your time and hope that you found the information useful. As a reminder, you will receive a link to the recorded presentation. And I hope to see you all for the next meeting, which is on March 22nd. We do have pulled up right now our contact information. So if any of you in the meantime need to reach out to any of us, you will have that information. And thanks again and have a good day, everyone.